L'kuta Sichos Chelek Tesvav Vayeshev Gimel Leilinish Mr. Vayeshev Binyamin Ben Reb Menashe Kaltman. Today we have a classic Rashi Sicha. We're going to look at a Rashi. We're going to dissect it, every detail of it, every word of it, and we're going to realize that the way we understood the Rashi at first is very different than what Rashi is trying to tell us. And once we get the change in approach, once we understand what Rashi is trying to accomplish, the whole Rashi is going to make sense perfectly. In Parshas Vayeshev, we have the story of Yosef being sent by Yaakov Avinu to Shechem, where the brothers, the Shvatim, are taking care of the sheep, and it is over there where the trouble begins with Yosef being sold. In Pasuk Vayemer le Yisrael to Yosef Lechna re'ei Shlei Machacha. The Pasuk says that Yisrael, meaning Yaakov Avinu, says to Yosef, "Go see the welfare of your brothers." Vayishlacheyu, and he sent him to Shechem. Vayavay Shechema, and he comes to the city of Shechem. Shtel tzech Rasha Vayavay Shechema. So Rashi quotes the words Vayavay Shechema, and he's mefarish Makim Muchan Laparonius, a place that is destined for trouble, for misfortune. Come on, Sif Gimel, and in Sif Gimel we're going to look at the continuation of Rashi, where Rashi tells us what is the actual Paronius. Where do we see that there was trouble in Shechem? But first and foremost, before we even get to the details, we have to understand a very fundamental question. What is bothering Rashi? He came to Shechem. What more do we need to know? What is the question in the simple understanding of the pasuk? That because of that question, Rashi feels the need to explain something more than the simple. He came to Shechem. So Rashi says it was a place that was predestined for misfortune. Mefarshim learn. So we're going to see two different answers of Mefarshim, two different sets of Mefarshim. Try to understand what is bothering Rashi, and in the end, the Rebbe refutes both approaches as a Pshutishal Mikra approach. One group of Mefarshim learn, since the pasuk already told us that the brothers were pasturing in Shechem, is nit neitik as their pasuk zol nacham al uistaichen vayavay Shechema. It's not any more necessary for the pasuk to tell us that he came to Shechem. The pasuk could have just said, and he arrived there. We would have known that it means Shechem because we know already that the brothers are there. From them was the pasuk is madriz v'yavi Shechema. From the fact that the pasuk emphasizes that he came specifically to Shechem, is mashma as the mitvet gemein Shechema yadua hamucham leporonius. So from this Rashi derives that there is a specific intention when we say Shechem, Shechem the infamous, Shechem the place that is known for its trouble. Al pi pshuto is aber schwer zu sagen, das is Rashi uisen zu bewarnen. However, on the basic level, it's very difficult to say that this is what Rashi is coming to address, the fact that it says Shechema and not Shama, or something like that. Vayel. Aleph, number one, for three reasons. Number one, megefint bekam mekaymis as der pasuk chazet iber dem Namen von an Ort und es sich nicht nestabek mit dem Wort Sham. We find in various places in the Torah that a pasuk will repeat the name of the place and does not suffice with saying that they arrived there or that they were there, but the pasuk actually repeats the name of the place. And we have an example for this in our parsha. He placed him in the jail. There he was in the jail. That he was put in charge of all the inmates that were in the jail. And it says Beis HaSeir 3 times. Das heißt, as in derech Pshat is as Kind minit, was the pasuk sagt, ve'ofen barur chazet iber nochmal dem shim hamakim, which this implies that according to Pshat is not a question. The fact that the pasuk specifies and then repeats the name of the place time and again is not considered a question. It's not something that is problematic in Pshutishal Mikra. And therefore, here too, if it says Shechem a few times, it wouldn't be something that Rashi would feel the need to address. Base. A second reason why this cannot be the thing that's bothering Rashi But Rashi is kasha kanal. If you would say that this is something that does bother Rashi, that the fact that we already know that they're in Shechem bothers Rashi, hatos doch gedarft bavaranen in the Friedikin pasuk. Then we're too late. Rashi should have addressed this in an earlier pasuk. Vayemer Yisrael haleach acharayim b'Shechem, where Yaakov tells Yosef, your brothers are taking care of the sheep in Shechem. V'shen dort is lechera nit neitik oisu taitchen azrayim b'Shechem, because over there in the previous pasuk, haleach acharayim b'Shechem, it's already unnecessary to say that they're in Shechem. V'alish teitchen frier, because there's an even earlier pasuk, vayelchu echav nit oisu tzen aviyim b'Shechem, that the brothers went to take care of the sheep of their father in Shechem. In other words, Vayavei Shechema is not the second time that Shechem is mentioned, it's the third time that Shechem is mentioned. First it says that the brothers were that they went to take care of the sheep in Shechem. Then it says, your brothers are in Shechem. And then it says, Vayavei Shechema. So if the fact that the Torah is repeating the name of the place is a problem, then already at the second time, Rashi should have addressed this. Now, if you're going to say, what should it have said? It's not like he could have said the Yavei Shama over there, because Yaakov is talking to Yosef. So the Rebbe explains in the parentheses, also in the previous pasuk, I'm going to go send you to your brother to Kayetzibazah. Then instead of saying, your brothers are in Shechem, I'm going to go and send you, it could have just said, I'm going to send it to your brothers, without saying if that was an issue, if there was a problem with the pasuk saying the name of the place twice or three times, then already at the second time the pasuk Rashi should have asked, why doesn't it say it in a different way and avoid repeating the name of the place? Gimel. The third question, Lefiza, if the only issue is the fact that it says Shechema and not Shama, which means that had it said Vayavei Shama, there would have not been an issue here at all. Then Rashi should have quoted in the Dibra Maschil only the word Shechema, not the word Vayavei. Vayavei is not the question. Vayavei Shama wouldn't have been a problem. It's the word Shechema that's the problem. So then just write the word Shechema in the Dibra Maschil. But we see that Rashi doesn't do that. It seems that the whole Vayavei Shechema is bothering Rashi. So therefore, we conclude that to say that that Rashi is bothered by the fact that it says Shechema and not Shama, that can't be the question. Because number one, we find Al Pipsut Shel Mikra in other places where a name of a place is mentioned numerous times. Number two, if Rashi was bothered by the name of the place, he would have mentioned it the pasuk earlier. And number three, Rashi says Vayavei Shechema, not just Shechema in the Dibra Maschil. Base. And the Mefarshim learn, and there's another group of Mefarshim that learn, as Rashi is the Usen zu Masber sein, that the whole that Rashi is bothered and is coming to explain why it says B'chlal V'yavei Shechema. We're not asking why it says Shechema and not Shama, but skip the two words totally. What happens after he arrives to Shechem? Yosef is lost. Yosef is Toya Basada. He's wandering in the field, and an Ish finds him. As Ish literally means a man. Rashi explains that it's Malach Gavriel, and he says, "I'm looking for my brothers." And the man tells him, "Your brothers left. They went to Dosan." Who cares where this happened? Why does it say Vayavei Shechema that it happened? They came to Shechem, and that's where this whole thing happened. What relevance is there to it? Is Rashi Mefarish? So therefore, the question is: skip the words Vayavei Shechema. That it is important to know where the story happened, because Shechem is a place that is predestined for trouble, for misfortune, and therefore the pasuk is telling us Vayavei Shechema to tell us that this is a makom muchan lapronus. Even this doesn't either is not either understood so well. The pasuk did say the pasuk tells us that the brothers of Yosef were in Shechem. Whereas to Zeya, Yaakov geschickt to Yosef, and Yaakov sent Yosef to them when they were in Shechem. He's pashut as his derech hakasa to the sailing, as Yosef's gegangen dort von dem geschickt. So it's obvious It's simple that the pasuk would tell us that Yosef went to the place where he was sent, which is Shechem. In Arah 14, he brings a couple of examples. One of them is where Yitzchak tells Yaakov Avinu, "Kum lech Padan Aram," go to Padan Aram, and then 3 psukim later, "Vayelech Padan Aram." He went to Padan Aram. It doesn't just say that he went, whatever it is, but it says he went to the place that he was sent. Nochmer, additionally, in the weitere psukim wird erzählt, wie Yosef gewent Toya Basada. In the next psukim, it tells us that Yosef was wandering in the field. And he tells this person, this man, which we said, like we just mentioned, is actually Gabriel the Malach. I'm looking for my brothers. And the man says they left here, they traveled away from here. Is pashut as to lieben hamshach hasipur was frier der Mantwer in the pasuk as Yosef is angekommen in Shechem. So it's obvious that the pasuk has to tell us that Yosef arrived in Shechem. Anders passt nicht der hamshach. Otherwise, the story doesn't make any sense. Toya Basada, why is he wandering? Why is he looking for his brothers? And most importantly, it says they left here. Where is here? If we don't know that he came to Shechem, then we don't know where he left from. So when the person says Nasu Mizeh, they left from here to go to Daisan, we don't know where that is. So the story, the details of the story are relevant, are understood only once you understand that he came to Shechem and the brothers aren't there. So he has to look for them. So the Malach says Nasu Mizeh. All these details only make sense once you realize that Yosef is in Shechem. So according to Pshutei Shel Mikra, this explanation doesn't either make sense. So we're back to our original question: what is bothering Rashi? Why does Rashi feel the need to say anything? Why can't we just say Vayave Shechema? Yosef came to Shechem. Why does Rashi feel that there's something lacking here, which has to be understood only through explaining the fact that Shechem was a Mokim Muchan Lapuranos? In Sif Gimel, we're going to continue with Rashi. Rashi is going to bring examples of the Puranius, of the different misfortunes that befell the Yidden, or the family of Yaakov in Shechem. We're going to ask a number of questions, 5 to be exact, on the second part of Rashi. There the Shvatim sinned in the fact that they sold Yosef. Sham inu as Dina, there they tortured Dina. Their Dina was abducted, violated. Sham nechleka malchus beit David. It was there that the kingdom of David was divided into two kingdoms, which ultimately become Malchei David, Malchei Yehuda, and Malchei Yisrael. Shenemar Vayelech Rechavam Shechem. The pasuk says Rechavam went to Shechem. Rechavam was the son of Shlomo HaMelech and should have been the successor of Shlomo HaMelech. And then comes Yeravam ben Nevat, who was from Shevet Ephraim and who already started up with Shlomo HaMelech during Shlomo HaMelech's lifetime. And after Shlomo HaMelech dies, there's no choice but to divide the kingdom, and this is the beginning of an entire era in Jewish history where there were two sets of kings, Malchei Yehuda, Malchei Yisrael, which obviously was a time of where Achdus was lacking, and it was a terrible time in Klal Yisrael. Where does this all occur? Where does it begin? In Shechem. Rechavam went to Shechem, and that's where he meets Yeravam, and that's where this whole saga begins. Darfun verstehen, so we have a number of questions on this. Aleph, dem Seder HaPuranius in Pirish Rashi, what is the order in which Rashi lists these events? The order von Inu as Dina has been freer, wie das ist was Kilkulu Ashvatim. The event with Dina, that Dina was violated, happened before the sin of the Shvatim of selling Yosef. So Rashi should have listed them in chronological order. The first thing of these three is that Dina was tortured. Then the Shvatim sold Yosef. And then later on in history, there's a split in Malchei Beis David. Nochmer. Additionally, this question is even stronger. The Moker von dem Pirush Rashi is in Gemara. This in Tanchuma, the source of Rashi's source, where he gets this from, is from the Gemara in Sanhedrin and from the Medrash Tanchuma. When Darton stains a takulate and say there is having interruption over there in the Medrash and in the Gemara, they are written in chronological order. Inu as Dina comes from Ershton, that the story of Dina's abduction was first. Why does Rashi change and rework the order to put the first Sham Kilkulu Hashvatim? And the Rebbe brings in the Haaretz that also, for Rashi's argument, it doesn't make so much sense. If you're trying to prove that Shechem was already Muchan Lapuranus, even before the story of Yosef, then why start with Kilkulu Hashvatim? If you are trying to prove that Shechem was predisposed to misfortune, so bring something that happened before the story of Yosef. Show that when Yosef was sold over there, it was already a place of Puranus. So in general, the order is not understood, especially since the fact that the Medrash and the Gemara have it in a different order and have it what we would think is the right order. Question Gimel. In Gemara and Tanchum is the Lashon B'Shechem Mochru Echav Es Yosef. The Gemara and Tanchum use the term in Shechem, the brothers sold Yosef. Was is their tam? Was Rashi is Mishano and Shreib Shom Kilkelu Hashvatim. Rashi doesn't spell out that they sold Yosef. He says over there they sinned. So why does Rashi change from the words of the Medrash and Gemara? And the question is stronger because quite the contrary. The Lashon Kilkul is masim eich ba nitkin harben inyan. The word Kilkul can be used even by not such a severe infraction. Kilkul is a lighter way of saying what happened over here. Al derech. Rashi says earlier, notice the Rashi uses the term, even during the kalkala, even during his sin, even during his misstep, he's still called the b'cher. He was still the b'cher, implying that what he did was wrong, but it wasn't so terrible. And since we're talking about the sale of Yosef, which was a very severe infraction, Rashi brings, the Haaretz brings, I don't see it here, but one of the artists, he uses the words that's called a pesha al michram ba'kesev, the fact that it was a sin, which is much worse than a kilkul. So why does Rashi downplay the severity of what the Shvatim did by using the words kilkulu, the word kilkulu? So not only are we asking the question, why does Rashi change from the word that says machru and say kilkulu, it also seems that Rashi is diminishing the severity of the infraction. Dalit question 4. In Nevi'im we find, and this is even before the story of the split of Malchei Beis David, which happens in the time of Rechavam. We find earlier another a terrible event that happens in Shechem. Avimelech ben Yerubal Shechema. Avimelech, the son of Yerubal, goes to Shechem, and he goes to the people of Shechem, and he asks them, do you want me to be the king, one person, or do you want, at that time there were 70 leaders of Shechem, who are actually his brothers or his family members, and he convinces the Shechem people to put him in charge, and then Vayarig Esachav, he goes to the home of Yerubal, his father, and he kills out 70 brothers, which is a terrible story. Why doesn't Rashi mention it? If Rashi is trying to prove that this is a place that is filled with misfortune, with sadness, with trouble, why doesn't Rashi bring the story? And it's even before, if you're going to say that Rashi is not going to go through the whole history, but he goes further than this in history. He goes all the way to Rechavam. And this story happened before that, so why does Rashi not mention it? And you can't say that the reason why Rashi doesn't bring this is because it wasn't a misfortune for all of Klal Yisrael. It only affected this family. Because also the violation of Dinah, the torture of Dinah, was also just affected one person or one family, not all of Klal Yisrael. Now, Sifhei, the final question is a very important question. Why is Rashi so focused on the negativity that happened in Shechem? There are beautiful things that happened in Shechem. Good things happened there too. So why call it a Makom Muchan LaParanos and focus on the negative if other things happen there as well? Liedach. Min gefind, as in Shechem, we find in Shechem, good things took place. Rashi already discussed this earlier, and the reason why Frier is emphasized, is bold, because if something was already discussed, that we know that the Menchamish Mikra, we know that the proverbial 5-year-old understands or knows that this already took place. So Rashi brings earlier on, as in Shechem, Kiblu Yisrael Shvuah Torah, that the Yidden accepted upon themselves the Shvuah, the promise of fulfillment of Torah. Over there, the pasuk says, "Vayaver Avram ba'aretz." Avram went through the land, ad mikoim Shechem, until Shechem, ad Eilein Meira, until Eilein Meira. Rashi brings that Eilein Meira is Shechem, and from there, Avram was able to see Har Grizim and Har Evel, and this is where the Yidden were makabel the Torah. So even though it hadn't happened yet, but Shechem, by Avram's time, but Avram sees Har Grizim and Har Evel, and that's right. That's right outside Shechem, or right in the area of Shechem. That's where the Yidden were makabel the Torah. It's a beautiful thing. We, out of all places in Eretz Yisrael, where would the Yidden say that we're accepting the Torah? In Shechem. And then there's a story in the Nevi'im. The Yeshua that Yeshua made a covenant with the Yidden for the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs. Over there in Yeshua, it says Vayeshev Yeshua as kol shifta Yisrael Shechema, that Yeshua gathered all the shvatim into Shechem, and there's a long pedic over there in Sefer Yeshua where Yeshua goes over, discusses with them all of the miracles that happened throughout their time together. Some of the pieces of the Haggadah. Especially, etc. A lot of these, some of these quotes from the Haggadah are actually from this Pedic in Yeshua. And then Yeshua asks them if they're ready to commit. And they say yes. And Yeshua says, get rid of your idols. And then it says, Yeshua, Yeshua made a covenant with the Yidden that they're going to fulfill Torah mitzvahs. So not only were the Yidden receive the Torah and accept the Torah in time of Moshe Rabbeinu in Har Grizim and Har Evel, but then later Yeshua makes a bris with the Yidden in that very same place. Dort hat Avram gehört von Eibishten wegen Besuras Azera und Besuras Eretz Yisrael. And it is there where Avram hears from the Eibishter that he's going to be blessed with children, and the Yidden are going to have Eretz Yisrael. In the same place of Vayaver Avram Baris as pasuk Vav. The next pasuk it says Vayiven Shom Mizbeach pasuk Zayin, that Avram built a Mizbeach, and Rashi says he built a Mizbeach to thank Hashem for giving him the good news that he's going to have children, and that the Eibush is going to give Eretz Yisrael to the Yidden. So what is the proof in Pshuta Shel Mikra that Shechem is specifically designated for negative events if we see also positive events happening there? So now we have our questions. Question number one was, what's bothering Rashi with the fact that he has to say anything b'chlal makom muchan laparanius? Then Rashi gives us 3 examples of paranius. So we ask, number one, why is it in this order that is not chronological? Number 2, why is it in a different order than the Gemara and the Medrash? Number 3, why use the word kilkelu instead of machru? Number 4, why not mention other negative events that happened in Shechem? And number 5, there were positive events in Shechem as well. Why focus on the negative? Now, in Sif Daled, we're going to focus on the question about machru versus kilkelu. We're going to explain that Rashi cannot use the word machru, that the Shvatim sold Yosef in Shechem because they didn't sell him in Shechem. They sold him elsewhere. So Rashi can't use the words sham machru es Yosef because they didn't sell him in Shechem. Sif Daled. Das was Rashi sagt sham kilkelu as Shvatim und nicht machru echvas Yosef kann man sein. Rashi geht bezal Shosef b'Rishal Torah. The fact that Rashi uses the word kilkelu and not machru can be explained. Rashi is following his approach, his understanding, according to Pshuta Shel Mikra. In the next pasuk it says that the person, the ish that was in the field, tells Yosef that I heard them saying, Nilcha doisoina, let us go to Doisan. Taich Rashi levakesh lacha nichli dosais, that Nilcha doisoina does not necessarily a place, rather it is a 2 words that are referring to other words. Nichle dases means legal reasons, legal excuses, legal pretexts. They went to find legal pretexts that they should be able to kill you. That's the first pshat of Rashi. That it doesn't mean literally that they went to that they went to another place, but they moved themselves from here to try to find excuses or ways to kill you. But according to the Pashto Pshat, it's the name of a place. The Ein Mikra Yetzim Ede Pshutai, and you can't take a pasuk away from its basic understanding. Toshas Rashi is meisef noch beide pirushim ve'emika yitzim b'dibshutei. The fact that after both pirushim, Rashi adds the words emika yitzim b'dibshutei, was begefindt nit bechlal in andere Erter, wo bringt zwei pirushim like God only pshutei, which we don't find this in other places where Rashi brings two pirushim. The Rashi brings one is a pshutei and one is a medrash or an agada, and Rashi should say at the end of everything emika yitzim b'dibshutei. That's very, very unusual. Is kavanase. So why does Rashi do it here? So Masber Zayin, Rashi wants to explain to us as Euchleiten ersten Pirush is ein Mikra Yitzim mit Pshutei und Deisne is Shem Makim. That even according to the first Pirush, that Nilcha Deisena is not the name of a place. Nilcha Deisena means Nichle Dases, that they were looking for reasons to kill, for excuses, for ways to kill Yosef. It could still also be a place. In other words, as Mefarshim explained, as in it's not either or. Not either it's Nichle Dases or the name of a place, but when the pasuk says Nilcha Deseina, it includes both aspects. Aleph Shemokimu, number one is the name of a place. As Achei Yosef and Shechem Avek in the Art Deson. Now the brothers of Yosef left Shechem and they went to Deson. Un Beis, as they again is given the Vakas Nichle Dases, and the purpose of their going was to find reasons or ways to kill Yosef. So this is unusual, where usually you have one or the other. You have one pshat or another pshat. They can't both be true. But here, by Rashi adding the words at the end of both pirushim, Rashi is telling us that both are true, even according to the first opinion. That Neilcha Deisena means Nichle Dases, it could still also mean Deisen. As the Shuttas Rashi Pirushi al Atei Pshuti Shel Mikra, that according to Rashi is Mechiras Yosef lebeide Pirushim nit given in Shechem. The sale of Yosef did not take place in Shechem, not in Daisan. Even if it means Nichle Dasais, it still is also Shem Amakim, and therefore, where do they actually sell Yosef in Daisan? Rashi can't use the same words as it's used in Gemara Tanchuma. Shem Mochru Echav V'Tesad in Shechem. The brothers sold Yosef. It didn't happen in Shechem. So this is a very simple explanation why Rashi uses the term kilkelu and not machru. Now in the brackets, the Rebbe is going to say, what about in the Gemara? The Gemara says, B'shchem machru echav es Yosef. So how do you fit that into the Gemara? If there wasn't Shechem, if it was Doisan, how does that fit? And the Rebbe is going to say how Rashi in the Gemara addresses that question. But Rashi in the Gemara is not compelled to follow Pshuti Shel Mikra. Rashi is there to explain the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't have to be consistent with Pshat of Chumash. But in Pshat and Chumash, the reality remains that the sale was in a city, in a place called Taisan. In Zayin Pirush al Hashas, Bavar Rashi de Kasher. In Rashi's Pirush on the Gemara, in Sanhedrin, Rashi addresses this question. Unis Mefarash, and he explains, V'Daisan dechsiv bikra, and the fact that it says in the pasuk Daisan. Gemara says, "B'Shechem machru echav es Yosef." It happened in Shechem. So Rashi says, it says in the pasuk it was in Daisan. Hainu kfar asamach Shechem. This is a suburb, a village outside of Shechem, right outside Shechem. V'nikra asal Shem Shechem, and it's still called by the name Shechem, because since it's a suburb of Shechem, it's still called by the name Shechem. Inami. Or else you could say another explanation. Ki Midrashi, as the Medrash says, so you done love lahargei. That they were judging him to kill him. As Rashi says in another place in Shas, in Gemara Soita, as laid the Medrash Teisan ain't a makim, that according to the Medrash Teisan is not a place. So in the Gemara, Rashi has two interpretations. Either Daisan is the name of a place, but it could still be called Shechem because it's a suburb of Shechem, or Daisan is not a place. Daisan means Dasos. Dasos from the word das, laws. They were looking for ways, according to the law, that they would be allowed to kill Yosef. But this only works according to Shas, where you're not limited to Pshuti Shel Mikra. But according to Pshuti Shel Mikra, Daisan is the name of a place. So you can't use the inami of Rashi over there, that it wasn't the name of a place, because we just explained that according to Pshuti, it's the name of a place. And nor can we rely on or use the other explanation of Rashi, that it was a suburb of Shechem. In Pshuti Shel Mikra, it doesn't either fit. Es ist nicht bestaber Shechem, so sein Muchel Peronius. Mitzad di Peronius was eine vorgekommen in a Kfar Samach Shechem. And it doesn't make sense to say that we could call Shechem a place that is predestined or predisposed to misfortune because of something that happened in one of its suburbs. In Gemara, fine, it can make sense. We're not, but in Chumash, where we're Pshuti Shal Mikra, we're not going to tell you that Shechem is a Malkim Muchal HaParanus because of the fact of something that happened in another part of town outside of Shechem. There's one more point to be made here. The pasuk emphasizes that it was a different place. They traveled away from here. It's hard to fit it in the simple understanding that it was a village right outside Shechem, and it says Nasu Mizeh. They traveled away from here. They went over there. They moved over a few blocks. If you're saying Nasu Mizeh, they left here, then it's very difficult to teach it to mean that they left here to go to a place that's right there. Und der Rebbe is asking Asham kilkelu Ashvatim. Therefore, Rashi says that it's over there that the Shvatim sinned. Niti mechire there an inyan kam mizeh from kilkelu. The sale didn't take place there. Rashi can't say that because of Pshuti Shal Mikra, it doesn't make sense to say that the sale happened in Shechem. It happened in Doison. So Rashi says what happened in Shechem kilkelu. Over there they sinned, but it wasn't nearly as bad as actually selling Yosef. So this, in a sense, answers question Gimel. Why Rashi uses the word kilkelu and not machru. However, it's not fully explained. Not in Doison. If the sale of Yosef happened not in Shechem but in Doison, then what happened? What did happen there? What did they sin? What did they do wrong in Shechem? If they had left Shechem and arrived to Doison, and ultimately there is where this whole story plays itself out, and he gets sold in Doison, then what's the Puranos that happened in Shechem? What's the Kilkilu that happened in Shechem? So therefore our question Gimel is not fully answered. Because if you're going to teach that the reason it says Kilkilu and not Machru is because he wasn't sold there, then what did happen there? So we have a bunch of questions which I already summarized before Sif Daled. So we now are going to go to the Biur in Sif Hey and to understand what Rashi is trying to tell us, and this will answer all of our questions. And what the Rabbi is going to explain to us in Sif Hey is that the way you understood the words Makom Muchal HaParanus was a little off, or maybe totally off. When you see the words Makom Muchal HaParanus, the way you normally understand it to mean is that this place was already a troublesome place. It was already a place that was predisposed for trouble, way before Yosef even got there. And throughout history, this is a place that is mole troubles. That's how you would want to. Usually, the words Makom Muchal HaParanus, that's what it means. Rashi doesn't mean that. Rashi means that it was regards to Yosef specifically. It was a place of Paranus. Yosef's troubles happen begin in Shechem, and that's why this will answer all the questions as we'll see inside. Because we're not talking about the fact that it was a Makom Muchal HaParanus for everyone or for all times. Specifically for Yosef-related things, it's a Makom Muchal HaParanus. Sif A. Is a Bir B'chozeh, here's the explanation. In Pashtus learned, the Pshat in the Maimer Razal, Makom Muchal HaParanus. Seemingly a person would have learned, and he's going to say that this isn't the way to learn it here, but a person would learn that when you say a place that was predisposed to misfortune, as Yosef came to a place that in general was predisposed to trouble. As Rashi continues and lists various different troubles, which happened over there. And therefore, because it was a troublesome place, therefore also Yosef has his troubles there. His sale, the sale of Yosef happens over there. As if to say, there's certain neighborhoods that are dangerous neighborhoods. You go to a dangerous neighborhood, dangerous things are going to happen. But that's not the pshat. In order for Rashi to address immediately that it's not what he means when he says the words Makom Muchal HaParanus, is Rashi Mishara Dem Seder. That is why Rashi changes the order of the things that happened there. Fundi Paranius from the trouble. And begins right away with the fact that the Shvatim sinned over there, which is the very event that's being discussed here. Rashi goes straight to our event, to emphasize that is where we see that this place is Muchal Apronius, was the Mitmach Rashi Klar. This is how Rashi clarifies. As Mitmakim Muchal Apronius, meint again the Prat. That when he says that this is a place of trouble, he's referring to the specifics, to this specific detail. Nor b'shayches to Yosef in Zusammenhang mit seinem Mechira, that specifically with regards to Yosef, as it connects to the sale of Yosef, Shechem was a place of trouble. Das heißt, as Kumadik in Shechem hat dort sich angeheben, die Achane zu sein Peronius, that once he comes to Shechem, that's when the story begins, the pregame, the preparation to his troubles begin once he arrives in Shechem. Because that's where the Shvatim sinned. And in the end of Sivav, we'll explain what their sin was, which is we had asked earlier already in the end of Siv Daled, what did they do in Shechem if they sold him in Doisa? And we're going to touch upon that in the end of Sivav. But the first thing we have to realize is that what Rashi is telling us is not that Shechem was in general a terrible place or a place of trouble, but Shechem was a fine place. But with regards to Yosef's troubles begin in Shechem. And from this we understand, as die andere zwei Paranis as Rashi bringt, also the other two misfortunes that Rashi brings. Sham inu as Dina, that over there Dina was tortured. Sham nechlaka malchus b'David, there is where the kingdom of David was divided. Haben arbund mit dem was Shechem is a makom laparanius, are connected with. Sorry, let me read it again. Haben arbund mit dem was Shechem is a makom muchel laparanius far Yosefin, that those other two events specifically are connected to the fact that Shechem is a place of misfortune for Yosef, which will be explained in Siv Zayin. So the underlying message, the underlying point, that the nutshell that we were just introduced to in Sif Hey, that it's going to answer all of our questions, is that Rashi wants to tell us that Shechem is a place of peronus, of trouble, of misfortune, specifically for Yosef. Starting with Sham Kilkulu Ashvatim, that's where the Shvatim sinned with regards to the sale of Yosef. And then Rashi brings other examples, but those other examples are going to connect back somehow to the sale of Yosef. Sivav. How does Rashi know this? The proof, and the compelling proof for this pirush, is the kasha v'shtel tzich in the verte v'charash is maitik v'yavishchama. The question that we have on the words of Vayeshev, which is why Rashi quotes those two words in the Dibur HaMaschil. That was the pasuk the fact that the pasuk ends with the fact that he arrived to Shechem, and all the details that happen in Shechem are in a separate pasuk. It seems to imply that the arrival of the Shechem is not just an incidental detail in the story, but rather that it's a important element of the story. Is mashmas Yosef's coming in Shechem is farzich an inyan ikri, that the fact that Yosef arrived to Shechem is on its own a primary detail of the story, a primary element of the story of Mechiras Yosef. To say as ein kommen dort is nicht an inyan derech agav. It's not incidental. Nor es is negea zu wissen as dort angekommen. It's necessary as a major part of the story to know that Yosef arrives in Shechem. Is nicht move on. And Rashi has a question on this. The brothers of Yosef weren't there anymore. Not in Doisan, Kanasiv Gimel, they're already in Doisan, as we explained before. Yosef's arrival to Shechem is only in a way of passing through. Going, continuing on from Shechem to his brothers in Doisan. Is naniach as libenhem shechasipur daf erzählt werden as Yosef angekommen in Shechem, even if we'll accept, like we said earlier in Sif Beis, that it is important to know that Yosef arrived in Shechem, to know where he was wandering, to know that he was looking for his brothers there, to know what it means nos umizeh, like we explained in Sif Beis. So we have to tell us that he arrived in Shechem. Why do we have to distinguish or spell out in its own way the fact that Yosef arrived there? By saying Vayavishchema, safe pasuk, we're implying that this is a very important detail, a very important element of the story. Pasuk could have just started, the next pasuk could have started, a man found him in Shechem, and he was lost. The Adgosh of Vayavishchema is the Chelek. What's bothering Rashi is that Vayavishchema is extra. Now, if you remember, The Mefarshim said the same thing. Vayavei is extra. And we said it can't be because we have to know that he arrived to Shechem. But now we're saying it from a different perspective. We're not bothered by the fact that it mentions Shechem. We're bothered by the fact that Shechem, the fact that he arrived to Shechem, was turned into a major element of the story and not just a detail. Of them zog Rashi, and therefore Rashi explains that this is a place that is predisposed to misfortune. This is where the Shvatim sinned. Yosef's uncle in Shechem is nit aderech agav dikar pratim from Mechilas Yosef. Yosef's arrival in Shechem is not an incidental detail in the story of the sale of Yosef. No, it's an inyan ikri farzich, but rather it's a very important detail. Das is der Ort, wo es sich umgeben seine Pronius. This is the place where the whole trouble began. Yosef's trouble. Because that is where the Shvatim sinned. And as we said before, what did they do wrong? It's true that we explained that the sale of Yosef happens in Doisan, aber der Kilkel von die Shvatim is schon gewähnt, wenn es eine gewähnt in Shechem. The mess up, the sin of the Shvatim began in Shechem. Dort haben sie schön angeben zu trachten und zugreiten für ihm die Paranias. It is there that they began to think about it. It is there that they began to prepare for this tragedy. The vakish lechanich as they were searching for you to find legal pretexts to be able to kill you because of them. So we understand what's bothering Rashi. Our first question was what's bothering Rashi. What's bothering Rashi is why Vayavei Shechema is related in a way that it is a major element of the story. And we understand why Rashi begins, why Rashi changes the Seder. Sham Kilkulu Ashvatim. He begins with Sham Kilkulu Ashvatim because Rashi wants to emphasize that he does not mean that Shechem is a bad place. He just means that with regards to Yosef's troubles, Yosef's misfortunes begin in Shechem. And since Rashi has to make this point, despite the fact that it's different than Pshutei Shel Mikra, so therefore Rashi, the order is different. In the Gemara and the Medrash, they're not necessarily making the point that it's specifically with regards to Yosef. It could be in the Gemara and the Medrash, it means there's a Malkim Muchal Lapranos in general. So therefore the order of the Gemara is different. But Rashi is talking about Pshutei Shel Mikra, and therefore Rashi changes the order from the Gemara and the Medrash. We also understand why Rashi says Kilkul not Machru, like we explained at length, because the sale happened in Doisan, not in Shechem. Before we get to answer the last two questions, why Rashi doesn't mention the other misfortunes that happened in Shechem, and why Rashi doesn't focus on the positive that happened in Shechem, which probably you already know the answer in your head because it's obvious. But we have to understand if the story of if this Rashi is referring specifically to the misfortunes that occurred to Yosef, how does the story of Dinah's abduction and how does the story of the division of Malchei Beis David come into this Rashi? So that's going to be explained in Siv Zayin. Shaykhas when divided dikit zwei Pranius. Sham inu es Dinah sham nechel Malchei Beis David mit dem was Shechem is a Malchei Muchal Pranius for Yosef, in to explain the connection between the other misfortunes that befell in Shechem. With regards to the fact that that Shechem is a place that is predestined or predisposed to misfortune for Yosef specifically, will be explained as follows. First, we're going to bring up another Rashi that is going to help us understand this. Rashi at Frier Mefaras, and Rashi explained earlier in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, as Yosef Yosef used to tell his father, used to inform to his father on his brothers about three things. Number one, that they were eating Eivim and Achai, which is one of the Shabbat mitzvahs Bnei Noach. Therefore, even though the Torah was not yet given, it was already something that they were obligated to observe. The second thing that Yosef would tell his father about his brothers was that they were disrespectful to the children of the Shvachis, that they would refer to them as slaves. And number three, they were under suspicion that they were engaging in illicit relationships. And with all these three things, because of all these three things, Yosef was punished. For the fact that he spoke about Eivim and Achai, he was punished with Vayishchatu, that the brothers slaughtered a goat to prove to Yosef, to Yaakov, that Yosef was dead. Valdiba, the fact that he was talking about the fact that the Bnei Hashvachis were being referred to as Avodim. So Yosef was La'eved Nimkar, Yosef was sold as a slave. And the fact that he told his father that the brothers were under suspicion for illicit relationships. Fatisa is the story with Yosef and the wife of Potiphar, where Yosef himself was challenged with this very, very thing. Since the punishment of Yosef is connected with these three details, or these three things, Aleph, Evim, and Achai. Number one, that it was connected with the fact that he spoke about Evim and Achai. Number two, that the Bnei Hashvachas were called Avadim, slaves, and Chashudim al Hara. It's Dafn Zagin as Shechem, Vuseiz. Given the Achana v'Aschala from Zayna Paranis v'Einshim, that the Shechem, which is the place where the beginning of all of his misfortune began, is Muchal Naparanis, that it's ready, it's prepared, it's predisposed to trouble. So Drai Mine Paranis bedayment to the Drai in Yanim and Yosef's Reit gegen seine Brüder. That in all three aspects of Yosef's words against his brothers, and in the three aspects that Yosef was punished, are all connected to something that happened in Shechem. The fact that the brothers were wanting to kill Yosef, which is a concept of spilling of blood, is as a achana to the Poronios for them was gesagt, as eine Nitnis and Evim Achai. This fact of Kilkulu Ashvatim, the fact that the Shvatim are discussing Yosef's death, is connected, or is where the predisposition of Shechem comes because of the fact that Yosef spoke with Evim and Achai, which is also a form of spilling blood. Vayishchatu. And ultimately, in Yosef's life, what happened is they slaughtered the goat. In other words, we're going to have three things here. We're going to have Yosef, what Yosef did, where we see it in Shechem, and what actually happened to Yosef. So what Yosef did was speak about Evim and Achai. What it caused was that Shechem would be a place where Kilkulu Ashvatim, where the Shvatim should talk about death of Yosef. And what ultimately happens to Yosef is Vayishchatu, that it doesn't have to happen in Shechem. What happened to Yosef doesn't have to happen in Shechem, but it started in Shechem. Then you have Mitzadem Hashaminu as Dina. The fact that Shechem is a place where Dina was abducted, was violated, is as Muchan Shdiparonius for them was gesagt as a seine Chshudim al Arayis. This shows that Shechem is prepared, is predisposed to the punishment that Yosef is going to get for saying that the brothers are under suspicion for illicit or immoral relationships. And therefore, in Yosef's actual life, Vatisa, Yosef struggles with the wife of Potiphar. So again, you have the event in Shechem is the abduction of Dinah. The event in what Yosef did was the fact that he said that they were chshudim al harayis, that they were having illicit relationships. And what ultimately happens is that Yosef struggles with an illicit relationship. And the fact that over there in Shechem is where the division of Malchus David occurred, which shows on a disrespect and a diminishing of the power of the kingdom of David, and it actually was instigated by Yeravam, who came from Shevet Ephraim, which is a descendant of Yosef. He says, it is now a place that is predisposed to punishment, which is being done because of Yosef's disrespect, speaking about the disrespect of the Shvatim to the children of the Shvachis by calling them Avadim, and in Yosef's life, Yosef gets sold as an Eved. So you may want to see this in a chart form. You have Evim and Achai, which caused Vayishchatu. Where did this begin? In Shechem, Nichle Dosis, Sheyim Misucha. Then you have the fact that he spoke up in Hashvachis. This causes the Eved Nimker. Where does this begin? This begins with the fact that it was predisposed for the Chalukah of Malchus based David. Then you have the fact that he spoke about Darayis, and this in Yosef's life it causes Vatisa. Where does this begin? With Inu as Dina in Shechem. And finally, so now we understand why Rashi brings specifically these two and not anything else. This now automatically cancels out the rest of the questions. As me gefindt, as on pasit in Shechem nor Poronius. One question that we said that there were noch Poronius, that there were other misfortunes that happened in Shechem. And our last question, there were good things that happened in Shechem. Rashi is only talking about Yosef. The other happy things that happened in Shechem are not related to Yosef specifically, and the other negative things that happened in Shechem are not related to Yosef specifically. Rashi doesn't talk about them. Rashi only focuses on the things that are connected to Yosef, either that happened to Yosef directly, or that were connected to Yosef through the punishments that Yosef received because of the things that Yosef did, that connect to the fact that in Shechem there were certain events that happened, like we just explained, either because of Yosef's talking about Eva Menachai, or because Yosef talking about the Bnei Ashvachas being called Avadim, or about the fact that Yosef spoke about Darayas. So therefore Rashi focuses on these three things that are specifically connected to Yosef. Mashiach for alle Yidden. But if you're going to look at the rest of the Yidden, especially since this is where all the Yidden signed or made a covenant, a treaty with Yeshua for the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs, Shechem is a wonderful place. Shechem is a beautiful place. Beautiful things happen in Shechem. The whole Klal Yisrael, the Yidden as we know it, as a people of Kiyum and Torah mitzvahs, originate from Shechem, and there's no misfortune there. Only with regards to Yosef is there misfortune there, according to Psutei Shel Mikra. And therefore Rashi points that out, that the fact that it says Vayavei Shechema is to tell us that Shechem was a terrible place for Yosef specifically, and there's three different events that happened there that all connect to Yosef's misfortune and to Yosef's informing to his father on his brothers, which in those three details led to three of Yosef's troubles, which were connected to three events that happened in Shechem.